stimulus, another COVID stimulus bill is also something that you're going to see happen in quite short order. And then because Democrats do control or will control Congress, that does change everything. It changes the scope and the scale of Biden's ambitions here and his ability to fulfill so many of his campaign promises. It doesn't change everything because, of course, it is a 50-50 split in the Senate. That is a very, very small majority. Of course, the vice president-elect Kamala Harris will be the tie-breaking vote, but it does mean that on so many issues, Joe Biden will be able to go big, certainly much bigger than he would have envisioned if Republicans were still in control of the Senate. And just remarkable to have this happen today, or to have 24 hours, after we saw these races in Georgia, to have to see what we are seeing, to see the divide in the Republican Party play out in this way is just remarkable. And to see what we are seeing right now as you were talking, those detonations on the steps of the Capitol as you were talking, smoke being cleared as well. People didn't seem to scatter as the detonations took off, as there we see some more of them as well, these flash bombs. I don't know who we have down there. Is Martha Raddatz anywhere close to that scene? Martha, can you tell us? Rachel Scott. Okay, Rachel Scott, you're down there. Can you tell us what's happening there, Rachel?
There was a group of media equipment set over just east of the Capitol, and we saw a group of this mob essentially destroy it using their fists, trying to dismantle the First Amendment coverage of what is happening here. It's ironic because the First Amendment protects us, but it also protects what the protesters here are doing. Not a protest anymore. At times, this is turning relatively violent. We have seen the movement of police not too long ago here. This is the Metropolitan Police Department of D.C., but we have yet to see the National Guard here. We have heard from D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser that the National Guard is on its way, and that state police from Maryland and Virginia will also be coming here to help. But I have to tell you that police are way outnumbered here by this pro-Trump group that essentially has taken over the Capitol. There is more police presence ramping up here as night falls on Washington, but this group seems to be in it for the long haul. And it seems like this will last well after sunset. Wolf?
Do we know, Pete, if there are still any of these rioters roaming around inside the House or the Senate, the U.S. Capitol, as we saw these ugly pictures emerge over the past couple hours?
I cannot speak to that, Wolf. There are plenty of people still outside here tonight, and I'm sure plenty of people would like to be inside, especially.
Was, but it was just a really tense moment here, and watching these matter of events just unfold and take a turn in a few short hours, George.
A heartbreaking moment, Rachel. Okay, thanks very much. I want to bring in Brad Garrett, FBI Special Agent. Brad, Rachel was just describing how they've cleared at least one side of the Capitol right now. Based on your experience, describe what's going to be happening over the next several hours.
So, George, you have to do this sort of in stages. You have people next to the building. They've used, it looks, some type of tear gas to move them. As you pointed out, it has limited effect on some people. Other people moved. And they'll gradually have to move that out because realistically, you can't use the National Guard to do baseline law enforcement stuff. You're going to use them as a perimeter. And so once they get the people pushed out, they basically are going to have to stay as a ring, in my view, in some form or fashion around the Capitol. Because the reality is, when you push them out eventually, as we go into nightfall, George, there's always tomorrow and the next day. And so this is not like that there won't be other groups of people. And one other thing, as this gets later, and I think Martha pointed this out, you're going to have other players try to get involved in this that'll be more of an instigator type person. And they're going to have to deal with those folks. But you clearly have to get them moving out of the way, or at least out of the immediate perimeter of the building before it gets started.
Tonight, my producer overheard somebody saying as we were walking in here, it's going to get real tonight. Wolf?
Yeah, I suspect, Donnie, it's going to get even more intense in the next few days as we get closer and closer to the January 20th inauguration of the next president of the United States, Joe Biden. Alex Marquardt, you're getting some more information. Update our viewers.
Well, Wolf, we've moved back a little bit because since we spoke to you last, a large crowd of these rioters, a mob of them, descended on the press area where we were. I believe that was the area that our colleague Pete Montine was talking about. Clearly not fans of the way that we have been depicting them, which is a mob of violent rioters. And so now the question becomes, when does law enforcement go in and clear this area? It has just been a surreal afternoon watching this crowd go in and get into the Capitol building. So what we've seen over the course of the past couple hours is different kinds of law enforcement gathering around the Capitol. What you're seeing right here is Metropolitan Police Department, so Washington Police. As you've been noting, Wolf, we are under an hour now from the curfew. It is not clear whether they plan on going in and helping clear out those rioters before the curfew, but that is certainly what we have seen in the past when there has been a curfew in this city. Now, there has been a steady stream of rioters coming from this northern side of the Capitol building, where they have been gathering for most of the afternoon, but there is still a significant contingent of them. And as you've heard from our other colleagues, many have said that they plan to stay here. And as someone was just mentioning, that it may get real overnight. I want to point out some of these rioters who are coming out from here. These are, I believe, Oath Keepers. We have seen members of that far-right extremist group that supports the president out here this afternoon, shouting insults at us, at members of the press, shouting insults at members of law enforcement, of the police. Things have been relatively quiet for a little while now. But as I was saying to you in our last time we spoke, this is still very much a standoff. We have not seen law enforcement go in and clear them out. Rioters are still in there. Law enforcement on the outskirts, on the perimeter of the Capitol building. And we will see what happens as we get closer to this curfew at 6 p.m. In just under an hour's time. Look at this scene, Wolf, here. This is more what I believe is Metropolitan Police. These guys are very much in riot gear, as you can see, head to toe with protection, helmets on, batons at the ready. They are going down Delaware Avenue. And we understand that there is all sorts of coordination going on between local law enforcement, federal law enforcement, the Capitol law enforcement, to clear out these rioters from the Capitol building, Wolf.
And I assume it's only going to get more intense. We just got a statement from the acting defense secretary, Miller, saying he's had separate conversations with Vice President Pence, Speaker Pelosi, Leader McConnell, Senator Schumer, Representative Hoyer in the House of Representatives, and says this. Let me read it. We have fully activated the D.C. National Guard to assist federal and local law enforcement as they work to peacefully address the situation. We are prepared to provide additional support as necessary and appropriate as requested by local authorities. And then adds with this. Our people are sworn to defend the Constitution and our democratic form of government, and they will act accordingly. So we see Capitol Police, we see local police from D.C., police are coming in from Maryland and Virginia, and military personnel. National Guard troops are coming in as well. We're going to see a whole lot more troops coming in, not just today, but in the next 14 days as we all get ready for the presidential inauguration. Pamela, what else are you learning?
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to tell you what we can't see inside the Capitol building right now, and that is law enforcement still clearing out the Capitol building as we speak. Rioters who trespassed went inside. Police are in there right now, still trying to make sure it is safe, secure, so that legislators can go back and finish their work under the Constitution. As we heard Alex Marquardt there say, he's not seeing a lot of activity on the outside in terms of clearing out folks. We're still seeing a lot of protesters there. But I am told from law enforcement that in addition to clearing out rioters inside of the Capitol building, they are also clearing them out at the inauguration stage and bleachers. So that is another area where the rioters took over. And I can tell you, law enforcement sources I'm speaking with, they are gearing up, Wolf, for a very long night.
And I'm sure they're gearing up for a very, very long 2 weeks until the inauguration as well. Caitlin Collins is over at the White House for us. Caitlin, what else are you learning?
Well, Wolf, of course, we saw the president after hours of his own supporters breaching the halls of the Capitol for the first time in over 200 years in this manner, finally put out that video earlier after he was urged by several staffers to put out a more forceful statement, something he declined to do, and instead for hours complained about the vice president defying him earlier today. We're now seeing even former members of his administration criticize this and say that it actually is the responsibility of President Trump. And that includes his first Homeland Security advisor, Tom Bossert, someone who has often offered analysis on what's been going on inside the White House, sometimes advice, sometimes criticism, but also sometimes praise. Listen to what he says now, Wolf. He says, "This is beyond wrong and illegal. It's un-American. The president undermined American democracy baselessly for months, and as a result, he is culpable for this siege and an utter disgrace. Despite of him, not because of him, police will regain control and prosecute those involved." Of course, let's also look at what his first chief of staff, Reince Priebus, said earlier today. He tweeted calling many of these people domestic terrorists, saying many are criminals and troublemakers, all acting in a manner opposite of patriotism. Wolf, those are much stronger words that you are hearing from the president's former senior staff than you heard from the president himself tonight, who in that video that he finally released, it was his third try commenting on what we've seen unfold in the Capitol today, say that people should go home, peacefully go home. But the president also said, "We love you," and said that he understood where they were coming from. And of course, baselessly alleged what is at the root out of a lot of this, which are these claims that this election was stolen from him, which of course it is not. That is the only time we've seen the president since that rally earlier today, where he was encouraging people to go to Capitol Hill. And so far, we have not heard any other comment from the White House tonight. Wolf.
Yeah, in that same video, the president insisted, as he has now for weeks, that the election was stolen. He insists he won in a landslide election. He is still continuing to lie and, in effect, egg on these rioters to continue what they're doing. Phil Mattingly is up on Capitol Hill. Phil, what are you seeing?
Yeah, Wolf, right now you're seeing really the crowds in the East Front start to stream out at a pretty steady clip. But I think the biggest thing that I'm hearing right now from lawmakers is they want to finish what they started today. And this goes for both parties. Lawmakers have been texting back and forth with lawmakers that have been in undisclosed locations surrounded by law enforcement officials in tactical gear with semi-automatic rifles. They are making clear they want to finish today. Now, the big question that they have, and I think what everybody's waiting for right now, is a couple things. One, they need to ensure that not just the Capitol is completely clear, but we've also seen and heard that law enforcement is sweeping through office buildings as well. You talked about the alleged pipe bombs in places just outside the Capitol complex. So law enforcement has a bigger job here than just trying to figure out where things stand inside the Capitol building itself. So that's one piece of this. The other thing as well, and I think this is what a lot of lawmakers are focused on right now, is how quickly can they get back into the chambers and what state are the chambers in? We obviously saw that some of the rioters or trespassers got into the chambers, what they did in those chambers, so that needs to be kind of figured out as well. But I think if there's one thing that has been consistent, and again, I say this from a bipartisan manner from lawmakers I've been talking to over the last hour and a half, they have gone from very rattled, very unsettled about what occurred and how quickly they were moved off the House floor, moved off the Senate floor, and into undisclosed locations surrounded by law enforcement, into very firmly believing that they want to finish this process and finish this process tonight. And Wolf, I think one other point, I've had a couple of Democratic senators tweet this out. Staffers actually grabbed the documents needed to complete the process of tallying the electors for certification on their way while they were rushing out of the United States Senate. So they still have those. And I think one of the concerns in the madness or the rush when this was all happening is what happens if those were left there while these trespassers or rioters were on the Senate floor. Multiple senators say staff has those. Those are safe. They're ready to go. It's just a matter of when they can actually get inside the chambers and go. As one senator texted me just a short while ago, we're ready to rock and roll. We just need the green light, Wolf.
Well, when they reconvene, assuming they reconvene, I don't know if they'll reconvene tonight or tomorrow or whenever, are they simply going to go through and certify what the Electoral College did, the 50 states and the District of Columbia, and approve the electoral vote naming Joe Biden the next president of the United States? Or will they continue with these objections and try to continue this debate, which is futile?
Wolf, this has been, I think, the big question we've all been trying to get answers to over the course of the last several hours. This actually came from a Republican lawmaker who said, I don't know how we can continue to pursue the objections after what just occurred. However, those who were putting up the objections or said they were supporting the objections made very clear their purpose wasn't to overturn the election, despite the fact that they were aligning with the president, who made very clear he was trying to overturn the election, and align intentionally or not with those who rushed the Capitol, who made very clear they were trying to overturn the election. So I don't have the answer to that right now. I don't know that the lawmakers who are proposing the objections have the answer to that right now. But I can tell you there is a critical and growing mass of lawmakers, including some of those who may have been on the fence about whether or not to support some of these objections, that just want to get this done, get this over with, and move on. This has been kind of a splash of cold water in everybody's face. These aren't just words. These aren't just people making things up. This isn't just the media. This is reality. Things got very, very real in very, very close proximity to a lot of lawmakers, particularly in the middle of the pandemic, when you haven't necessarily been able to have town halls, you haven't necessarily been able to meet face-to-face with a lot of people. You only hear from your most dedicated constituents, and on the Republican side, they are all very dedicated to President Trump. This got very real very fast, and so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out when they reconvene, when they get things back together again. Because to be completely frank, Wolf, I haven't talked to a lawmaker, including several, and I know you guys spoke to a couple on air, several who were deployed downrange in Iraq or Afghanistan, who aren't coming away from this experience pretty shaken by what they saw.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do either. I did see a tweet from Senator Josh Hawley, who's been one of the architects of this futile challenge to what the Electoral College did. And in that statement that he tweeted, he ended by saying, Congress must get back to work and finish its job. Finish its job. I don't know what that means, but we'll try to figure that out. Jim Acosta is over at the White House getting more information as well. Yeah. What are you learning, Jim?
Well, just an update on the state of mind of the president right now and the state of mind of staffers inside the White House who are shell-shocked by some of these events up on Capitol Hill. I talked to a White House official just a short time ago who said, you know, before the president released that video, before the president made the decision to call in the National Guard, aides to the president had to go to the president in the Oval Office and almost beg him to make these decisions, to beg him to make that video, to record that video, and also to make this decision to call in the National Guard. Why is that important? Because this president is going to be in charge, presumably, for the next 14 days. And if the president can only throw gasoline on the fire, it is going to be up to this skeletal staff that he has left over here at the White House to go to the president and get him to try to do the right thing from time to time. I think that is a worrying development. The other thing I heard from a source familiar with some of the discussions over here is that White House staffers are just horrified by what is going on up on Capitol Hill. But, Wolf, that begs another question. It begs the question, I think we're at a critical stage now, given what we've seen up on the Hill. Do we see resignations from White House staffers? Aren't we at a point now, Wolf, where we should see resignations from White House staffers? This scene that we saw up on the Hill today, the siege on the Capitol, should be enough, one would think, in a normal world, to prompt the resignation inside a White House, inside administration. Obviously, we haven't seen that at this point.
We're just seeing these individuals being taken away now. So they may have been people who were in the Capitol who they managed to get out. We just don't know at this point.
Perimeter around the Capitol now. You see the sirens, you see the flashes. We're glad you moved to a safer location. Martha, thank you. Let me go to John Greenblatt with the Anti-Defamation League. And John, we've been talking a lot about these protesters today that have become rioters at the Capitol. It is a situation that has been building for some time. Yes. You've been tracking white supremacist group. You've tracked the Proud Boys. What can you tell us about what you've seen today? And is it something we should have been surprised by?
Yeah, George, this was a dark day for democracy. I think we've been talking about this for years, for months, in recent days, because we take these extremists at their word, and they have been telling us that they plan to mobilize and commit acts of violence. And I think the displays that we saw today on our television screens, the images literally of extremists storming the halls of Congress. I mean, to be clear about how extreme this was, this didn't happen during the U.S. Civil War. So what we saw today in modern times is without precedent. I would say that the responsibility for this grotesquerie lies at the feet of President Trump, who has been stoking division and spreading disinformation and spawning hate for years. And the people who he assembled today, George, it was a who's who of right-wing extremists. There were members of the Oath Keepers, an anti-government militia, an armed militia group, the Groyper Army, whose leader Nick Fuentes was there. There were a white supremacist organization, the European Heritage Association, another white supremacist group. There were Proud Boys who were present. We're still not sure of all the people who were actually arrested inside the Capitol today, but my analysts are looking at the images, and I'm certain we're going to know very many of them because their ability to this, in many ways, George, this was a bookend to Charlottesville, where
inaugurated. In the background, you can see the Washington Monument. The police have now decided, after several hours of this huge mass gathering on the western side of the Capitol, to flush them out. We have heard reports of tear gas. I have not seen that in the last few moments, but there's no question that the Metropolitan Police Department, as well as the other law enforcement agencies, will not hesitate. Here we're being asked to move back. Yes, officer, we will. You can see this officer, for example, fully equipped with riot control gear. And as I was saying, Wolf, we do not get the impression that they will hesitate to use those riot control measures to get these masses of rioters away from the Capitol, which they attacked and have been, which they got into over the course of the afternoon, Wolf.
Yeah, they should use all means necessary to get this under control. This is a disgrace what's going on up on Capitol Hill right now. Just be careful over there. You know, we'll stay in very close touch with you, Alex, and we can see crowds are still there, John King. We can see them. They're beginning to leave, but it's a really dangerous situation. Donnie O'Sullivan is still there. Donnie, tell us what's going on.
Hey, Wolf. Yeah, some tear gas was deployed here in the past few minutes. That's why you're seeing these people coming down, the sort of last stragglers, really, who are here left at the Capitol. We've seen thousands of people move off the lawn in the past few hours, and they've all been telling us how proud they are to be a part of this mob. They're repeating all the conspiracy theories that President Trump has been spewing for months and that he spewed outside the White House today. And it's really just quite a surreal scene here, and I think we better move beyond this police line as they're really now moving all of us out of here, Wolf.
Yeah, I just want you to be careful, Donnie. Be careful over there. Go ahead, Donnie.
We're just hearing some really, vile language being directed at members of the media. People just, again, repeating these lies. People who are totally in denial that in just a few weeks, only a few hundred feet from here, Joe Biden is going to be inaugurated President of the United States. And you can see we're stepping over the fences and barriers that were broken by these members of this mob earlier today. We were here, we marched from the White House after Trump's address. We marched with Trump supporters, and when they breached this barrier, it's happened all of a sudden shortly after he concluded speaking, and people just started pushing and moving up, and we've seen destruction all around this area, Wolf, and we keep hearing over and over again. I just heard somebody else saying, this is just the beginning. Wolf?
Yeah, I assume they're saying, Donnie, what the president himself just said in this videotape that he posted on Twitter, that he said the election was stolen. It was a landslide election that he claims he won. He says everyone knows it, especially the other side. These are total lies, but it comes from the president of the United States, and it's encouraging these rioters to do what they're doing, right?
Hey, guys, come here. Oh, Sam, over here.
Yeah, that's right, Wolf. And I mean, you and I have discussed how conspiracy theories have really just are now playing such a prominent role in American life that you're seeing this all play out here. You know, we've spoken for years about Facebook and Twitter and their failure to act on conspiracy theories and hateful speech online. And we're seeing the results of that play out here on the streets of our nation's capital today. I mean, we're beyond the fact. In 2016, we heard about Russia trolls, and people tried to write off anything about social media, saying, "Oh, it's only a few Facebook posts. What harm?" Here's the harm: the harm of conspiracy theories, the harm of lies, the harm of people living in these online and Trump media echo chambers where they are so deluded,
and you hear
they can't get to grips with reality and understand that Joe Biden will soon be president. Wolf?
In 14 days, he will become the president of the United States. Donnie, just be careful over there. I know that we're less than a half an hour from the curfew that will be imposed here in the nation's capital. Hard to believe that this is going on at this sensitive moment right now. Brian Todd, you're getting more information as well. What are you learning?
Well, Wolf, several law enforcement vehicles have just moved into the plaza on the east side of the Capitol. Also, a large fire truck, and as you can see over here, there's an ambulance. Eddie Gross, our photojournalist, will pan over there where they just put someone inside the ambulance. I believe they took that person out from inside the Capitol and put them in the ambulance. You see the riot police over here forming a line around the center steps of the east side of the Capitol. Short time ago, they moved the remaining rioters that were on the steps off slowly and peacefully. But, you know, look, as I heard Donnie and some of our colleagues saying earlier, a lot of these rioters are basically crowing that they believe that they kind of won the day here. I heard one rioter yell at the police, "You didn't take it back, we gave it back." So they have some swagger here tonight. Most of them have left the plaza at this point, but I think a big question now.
Washington monument that you really can't get access or use. Sort of these hallways that are locked off for security reasons that don't really lead anywhere. And today, these images were just so striking. You had almost all these windows were broken, and people were trying to swarm in. And it was almost as if they did not have enough Capitol police officers to deal with anything. It's almost remarkable in one sense that we've only heard of several, of just sort of a handful of instances of gunshots and maybe one or two injuries from protesters. I'm surprised it's not actually more, quite frankly. So they really have a tall order ahead of them trying to secure this whole facility and also make sure that it's protected so that the members of Congress, the more than 500 members of Congress, can go back to doing their work in both chambers. And then also, we're not even talking about the inauguration that's
Back to you.
Brian, be careful over there. I want you to be safe. John King, it's hard to believe, John. People all over the world are watching what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now, including world leaders. I'm getting statements, John, from world leaders who are shocked. Jan Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General, says shocking scenes in Washington, D.C. The outcome of this Democratic election must be respected. And there's more and more world leaders, John, people all over the world can't believe what's going on here in Washington, D.C. There's a threat to a peaceful transfer of power.
No, and these foot soldiers of a movement, they say, will make America great again, or making America an embarrassment to the world today. Well, Boris Johnson, the President's ally, the Prime Minister of the UK, issuing a very similar statement. I'm getting messages, as you are, from friends, from sources, from government officials, ambassadors around the world, some here in Washington representing overseas countries. They just simply don't understand what is going on. They can't believe what they are seeing in the United States of America, which is supposed to be the beacon of the global democracies. It's supposed to be, that shining city on a hill. It's supposed to be, as many of the conservative Republicans, helping the president with his fantasy challenge to an election that is over. They always say America is an exceptional. They're for an exceptional America. Well, this does not make America an exceptional. Respecting our norms and our democracy doesn't. To that point, Wolf, I want to come back to something you reported to our viewers earlier today about what we're seeing, the deployment of the National Guard. You read the statement from the acting defense secretary, where he said the acting defense secretary and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff spoke with the vice president, Speaker Pelosi, Leader McConnell, Senator Schumer, Representative Hoyer. What's missing? The president. They spoke to the vice president, not the president of the United States. Where is he? Does he not want any part of this? He's the president of the United States who doesn't attend coronavirus task force meetings, who refuses to meet with the experts on the pandemic that is sweeping across the country, and now the vice president has to.
People walk through it all day long. Members of Congress speak with their constituents all day long. Staffers going back and forth. All of that put to a stop today. I know you've been speaking with many of them as well. What are you hearing?
Yeah, and they're doing the people's business, but they're humans themselves. I mean, the texts that I've had today have been from young staffers who are hiding in closets, texts that we normally get during mass shootings. I've had texts from staffers who are trying to make sure that their bosses are okay. Bosses, members of Congress who are huddled in other members' offices trying to shelter in place. I was texting with one colleague at one point today who didn't want to tell me where they were or speak loudly on the phone because they were worried they might be heard by some of these, we're not even sure what to call them anymore, these anarchist protesters, terrorists in the hallway. They didn't want to speak too loudly because they were nervous about whether they would be revealing their location. I mean, just the amount of fear and anxiety on a human level that I think we shouldn't lose today. But, you know, I just also want to take a moment. I was really rattled when Jonathan Greenblatt, who you had on just a little bit ago, he kept referring to the Civil War. And he was not using that imagery lightly. You know, I was thinking about the fact that just 2 weeks ago, we had President Trump veto a very popular bipartisan spending bill, partly on grounds that he didn't want military bases to be renamed for Confederate names to be overturned. And we had this morning Mike Pence referring back to a time in our history right after the Civil War, when the country was trying to piece itself together and had to reinvent these rules around the Electoral College. You just have this feeling today that we are seeing images that harken back to a time of civil war that I never thought in my lifetime we would be seeing or having to even have a conversation about again.
On that point, one of the most striking images of the day, I don't know if we have it, Mark, but that image of one of the protesters walking through Statuary Hall in the Capitol, a Confederate flag over his shoulder in the Capitol of the United States. Mary Alice, thank you. I want to bring in Congressman Ken Buck, Republican of Colorado, also former law enforcement officer. I know you were on the floor as this all unfolded. Congressman, I'm glad you're safe. Tell us what you saw.
Hello?
Hi, Congressman.
Yes.
Hi, I just want to thank you for joining us. I was saying I'm glad you're safe. Tell us what you saw as this all unfolded on the House floor earlier this afternoon.
Well, I was one of the speakers, and so I was on the House floor. The first thing that happened was plainclothes Capitol officers came in and escorted the speaker from the chair. We resumed debate at that point. We were informed soon after that the House, that the Capitol building had been breached. About 10 minutes after that, we were advised to reach under our chairs to grab a gas mask and put a gas mask on because tear gas had been deployed.
You put in place a 6 p.m. curfew. How worried are you about what might come tonight in D.C.? We're already hearing from these, whatever you want to call them, rioters, terrorists, anarchists, insurrectionists. We're already hearing from them that they're planning to get even rougher when it gets darker.
Well, thanks, Jake, for having me on. We have a curfew in place, and we're advising everyone to leave the area, to vacate the Capitol grounds, and to go to their place of residence or wherever they're staying, and preferably go back to their state. What we've seen at the Capitol today is certainly unpatriotic. It's wrong and it's illegal. I have fully deployed the Metropolitan Police Department, the D.C. Police Department, to assist the U.S. Capitol Police. Our police have entered the building and will establish a perimeter and enforce our curfew.
I have to say, I'm surprised that these insurrectionist rioters were able to get into the Capitol to begin with. They were breaking windows. There was blood spilled. I know that the Capitol security is the responsibility of U.S. Capitol Police, and they don't report to you, they report to Congress. But what's your best understanding about why this was able to happen?
Well, certainly we are there to assist the U.S. Capitol Police with any and all requests. I think you know the very significant perimeters we established around D.C. streets, and we're right there to support them, and now to enter the building to make sure we have control and maintain control in order in the district overnight and over the next days.
Do you think if this was a Black Lives Matter protest, they would have been able to get into the Capitol and wreak the havoc that these pro-Trump people were able to cause? I mean, I think there are a lot of people watching this and saying it seems like there's a real double standard, that these MAGA protesters were able to commit acts of violence that they can't imagine any other group being able to cause in Congress.
Well, I can certainly talk about our response to all of the protests and our assistance to our federal partners and vice versa. And what we've seen here is a breach of our very democracy. And so we will continue to work with our partners to get it under control.
In 15 minutes, the curfew drops, and anybody who's still out will be in violation of the curfew. Will they be arrested?
Our police are moving, and we'll work with not just the D.C. police. We have.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I think that the president's statement, he asked people to go home. I think that the Attorney General has made it clear that Attorney General Bill Barr has made it clear that what's going on in the Capitol is despicable and has to cease right away. And I think many others of us are sending out social media messages that are clear. While we're conservatives, we absolutely don't tolerate a violation of the rule of law, and that's what we're witnessing right now.
And moving forward, what should be on the agenda now?
Well, I think we have to make sure that the world sees that Congress is back in session. We are going to certify this vote. We are going to have a peaceful transfer of power. We should, among other things, look at our system of electing our president and make sure that it is credible and all Americans have confidence in it. And I think that we resume our duties to do the people's work.
Congressman, thanks for your time today. I'm glad you're safe. I want to bring in Senator Joe Manchin, Democrat of West Virginia. Senator Manchin, we just heard one of your colleagues saying you're determined to go through the night to get this done. Is that realistic?
Yes, I think it is, George. We were all together, and we're all secure, and we're all safe. And it's been a sobering moment to watch those who were kind of at odds up in the floor previously before this fiasco started, and the mob did what they did, and we were all ushered into this safe area. And people started talking and going around, and I made a point to talk to all of the senators. They're my friends, and they're objecting. I respect their right to object, and I spoke to them, and I think they're having second thoughts on this, what this has done, and what the outcome has been. So the main thing that we're determined on is staying here. We're not going to let a mob run us out. They're not going to run us away from our job and our duty and our responsibility to govern. And I feel very, you know what, George, in this most difficult, challenging times, it might be this horrible act that starts uniting us back and doing our job the way we're supposed to, and starting basically bringing America back together.
Well, the last time Congress seemed to be unified, America seemed to be unified, was after the 9/11 attacks, almost 20 years ago. This is an attack from our own country, from our own people.
I just can't believe it. I can't believe the President of the United States would incite this type of action. You know, it's just unacceptable. It's un-American. I've never seen anything like it. I can't believe how a human being could think this way. I really can't. We might have our differences political, but it doesn't mean I've got to be at odds to where I want to destroy you.
So in your talks with your fellow senators, friends and colleagues, even the ones who are objecting, did you get a sense, you said they might be having some second thoughts, did you get a sense they might be scaling back their objections so this can be finished?
See. I'm very hopeful of that. I can tell you that they were all very somber. those, because they were basically doing whatever they believed, and they have a right to do that. As a senator and as a congressperson, you have rights to represent the constituents and the people that you have taken an oath to. But you take an oath to the Constitution. We don't take an oath to a monarchy or a dictator. We took an oath to a Constitution. And the Constitution is owned by the Republic and the people of the Republic. And, I talked to all of them, as many as I could, of the 13 or 12 or 13 senators that were objecting. And I said, I would hope that you all think. I said, I respect your right. You're my friend, and you will continue to be my friend. But I hope you see what's causing and what's inciting this. And only you and all of us working together can tamp this down and bring our country back together. I'm hoping that got through, George. I really am.
Well, you were working with several of your colleagues in the weeks before this happened to try to build a bipartisan consensus on COVID relief, on the COVID relief bill. It's going to be more necessary than ever coming up in the new Congress, even though Democrats, it appears now, will gain control. It'll be a 50-50 split right down the middle. Those of you in the center are going to hold the whip hand.
Well, we don't look at it from that standpoint. It's not having the power to use or abuse. It's basically having the power to unite, and that's what we will use. And we're staying together. We're not going to be faltering in our objection to make this government work again. We got to get back to regular order. We've got to go through a process. Bills have to come to the floor that are bipartisan. It has to be voted, and has to be amendments. We can make adjustments and all that, and we'll take some tough votes. This is ridiculous what's been going on for the last decade, and we've got to stop it. And I think on both sides, but I can tell you, the bipartisan bicameral group that we put together that brought a package forward that finally got passed to help the American people, this is a group to continue to move this country in the most sensible, reasonable way.
Well, if an act like what we've seen today cannot bring people together, I don't know what can. Senator Manchin, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you stay safe as you work through tonight. Thanks very much, Senator.
We're going to work. We'll get this job done. Okay, thanks, George. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Let me bring Mary Bruce back. You heard the senator say there that he's been talking to some of his colleagues who are having second thoughts. You've been in some contact with some House members as well?
Yeah, and George, we are hearing very similar that some of those who have been or were vowing to contest the election results may now be changing their minds. They certainly are going to be, I think, under a lot of pressure, especially since, of course, none of this is going to change the results of the election, right? What we were seeing before all of this erupted was really a show simply for the president. And given the fact that
she's in such a tenuous position, who is going to establish order? Or to quote President Trump, law and order on the streets of Washington, D.C., this is really important because they have stormed the Capitol. Yeah. They have put people in danger. People today have been seriously injured or potentially worse, and we have not gotten a sense that there is really anybody in charge.
And as you were interviewing Mayor Bowser, we got word that the Virginia governor issued a curfew for the D.C. suburbs in Virginia, Alexandria, and Arlington, also 6 p.m. So we're talking, about 8 minutes from now, there's supposed to be a curfew in place there as well. Another thing that we've got some reporting on, of course, all of this is happening, and what is on hold is the very big, very important constitutional duty that the United States Congress has, that they were in the middle of doing when all of this happened, which is to certify the Electoral College and to make it even more official that Joe Biden will be president and will be inaugurated on January 20th. Behind the scenes, because these senators and House members are in undisclosed locations, a lot of them are together. And there are conversations going on. And I am told, and Manu Raju was told similar, that particularly in the Senate, because as we talked about earlier, you need if a House member is going to raise an objection, they need a companion to Senate or to stop the proceedings and have 2 hours of debate. That Democrats and some Republicans are trying to convince the Republicans who had planned to object to the next states after Arizona. We knew that it was Georgia. We knew that it was Pennsylvania. Trying to convince them, okay, enough, back down. Clearly, the point was made, and we need to move on, and we need to wrap this up. The plan is still to try to get back into the Senate tonight, to get back onto the House floor tonight, but those conversations are happening as we speak.
Yeah, the point is made, meaning the lie has been given credence by you protesting House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Senator Ted Cruz, House Minority Whip Steve Scalise. You have given credibility, and that's why these people are so mad and they're rioting. Congratulations. I want to go to Manu Raju right now, who last we heard from him, he was being escorted through the bowels of the U.S. Senate, taken to an undisclosed location. Manu, where are you? Are you safe?
Yeah, we are safe. We are in a secure location. We are there's lots of law enforcement officers here, and a bit of good news after a chaotic day, law enforcement is now telling the Capitol, telling people in the Capitol building is now secure. So they feel that the building is now secure. There's a message coming from the Senate and House Sergeant at Arms. They are the key officials who ensure that the security of this building. So after rioters stormed the building, damaged the property, and created havoc, and engaged in violent confrontations with police, now law enforcement believes that the Capitol building is now secure. So what does that mean?
And that's what we should call it. That's what we are calling it.
What we heard from the congressman from Oklahoma earlier today, at least 25 Capitol Police injured.
George, it's so bad. I mean, when I saw this, I couldn't believe it. The governor of New Jersey says that they have asked for help. So now state police in New Jersey are going to protect Washington, D.C. It's hard to believe.
Tom Yamas, thanks very much. Let me bring in Senator Jeff Merkley this afternoon. Senator, we showed that picture you had taken or you had obtained of the staffers protecting the Electoral College ballots. We're showing it again right there. Remarkable that had to be done.
Oh, absolutely, because the rioters would have busted those open, burned those ballots, and it just feels something sacred about those boxes holding the decisions of the citizens of the United States on the election of our president. So just tremendous appreciation to those staffers who smartly grabbed those boxes and protected them.
Tell us what you've been going through today, what you expect to happen next, Senator.
Well, we are hoping that when the grounds are secured, and hopefully that will be within a short period of time, we'll be able to return to the Senate floor, continue the debate, hold the vote, and I believe that it will be a very, very strong vote to reject the objections to the electoral votes from Arizona, which is what was being challenged. And as I've talked to a number of my Republican colleagues, I think there is a good possibility they will drop all additional objections for other states, and we will get these votes secured. These are objections that should never have happened because the responsibility we have under the Constitution to count the ballots, the only basis in law for challenging them is if they weren't properly certified or if they misrepresent the information that should have arrived in them. And there was absolutely no contention by those who spoke on the floor that either of those things were the case. This was really an effort to say if we can take these votes away from Biden, we can send the decision to the House of Representatives where Republicans can keep Trump in power. And in that sense, it was just an absolute version of a coup that you would expect in a basically some authoritarian nation without the strength of our traditions and our obligations to the Constitution.
Senator Merkley, we heard similar feelings from Senator Joe Manchin just moments ago, saying he thought that several of the colleagues who were bringing objections were having second thoughts. Have they told you that directly, or is this still an uncertain situation?
Yeah, Brian, what you just saw over the last a couple colleagues have said that they never intended their actions to be interpreted as an effort to actually undo the election, that they were only intended to have it be a protest to say we need to pay attention to the issues that President Trump has raised. But here is the situation. When a president proceeds to lie to the American people, those Republicans had a responsibility to stand up and say, this is not true. This is like any leader who generates a mob. Other leaders need to stand up and say that information is false. They need to basically not kowtow to the mob. they need to inform and disperse it. And so what we saw today was really the result of the failure of our Republican colleagues to carry the responsibility of leadership to say President Trump is wrong, that there has been integrity in these elections, that it has been scrutinized by the state authorities, it has been reviewed meticulously by dozens of courts. This election stands, and that's what we do in a republic. We stand with a peaceful transfer of power, not an effort by an authoritarian like Trump to hang on to power through any means possible.
Senator Merkley, this was only the latest example of that kind of enabling by the president's supporters over the last 4 years. How do you explain it?
Oh, boy. There's going to be a lot of time for us to try to analyze all that's gone wrong the last 4 years. But we know from looking around the world and in current times as well as in history that leaders can gain power by fostering hate, by fostering division, and that's exactly what Trump set out to do. And I heard my colleagues over the years say, well, it won't get any worse, it'll get better, this will be the end of it. And then suddenly they find that they're hostage to their base, because their base has heard this message and inhaled it, come to accept it, come to believe in it. And suddenly they're worried about losing their elections and their primaries if they don't partner with this leader being President Trump. And at that point, they are enslaved or trapped by their own failure earlier on to stand up for justice, for stand up for the truth. And that's where we ended up.
Senator Merkley, thank you for your time today. Good luck going forward. Good luck getting back to work tonight. We're glad you're safe. I want to go back to Martha Raddatz in Washington, D.C. It appears that at least on one side of the Capitol, much calmer now, has been cleared. What's happening where you stand?
We just saw busloads of National Guard head into the Capitol grounds, George. There have been 1,100 D.C. National Guard called up and 600 National Guard from Virginia. We see FBI officers actually just inches from us here walking down Constitution Avenue, and we'll just follow them here. Let me get out of the way. But those busloads are there. We assume they're going to clear out the last of the crowd because, George, it's now 6 p.m. There's a curfew in effect, and they've announced that anybody who's not out of there will be arrested. And there is so much law enforcement. Hang on. Hang on. We've got some more vehicles coming here. Let's get out of the way.
Streets right now.
We saw those arrests earlier. We have armored police vehicles going down here. If you look down Constitution Avenue, it is all law enforcement. Coming up this way, going down that way. But again, those National Guard going right there onto the Capitol grounds. They are not armed. The National Guard is not armed, but those armored vehicles now heading into the Capitol grounds where the remaining rioters, those people who would not leave, and many who probably were part of that break-in. We saw a little earlier, they were hauling off some of those rioters. They were arrested.
Constitution Avenue, Martha, usually the site of the inaugural parade.
It is just appalling to look down Constitution Avenue and just see nothing but red and blue lights of law enforcement vehicles. There is a solid perimeter, it appears to me, from this place around these Capitol grounds now. Many law enforcement, Capitol Police, Metropolitan Police from D.C., police from Virginia, all descending on this area to set up this perimeter. Now, how they're going to get rid of those hundreds of people, they have definitely told them to clear out. We've seen no one come this way since 6 o'clock, no one walking down this way, trying to clear out that area. And in fact, we've seen some people kind of heading into that area.
Well, and we're seeing the National Guard now get off those buses at the Capitol, prepared for some sort of action prepared to enforce this perimeter. And we heard from Mary Bruce that the Sergeant-at-Arms believes the Capitol will be secured in the coming hours.
I think the inside of the Capitol has been secured. They announced that the inside of the Capitol has been secured. In other words, all of those rioters are out of the inside of the Capitol. I'm sure what they tried to do is go room to room before they would ever announce anything like the Capitol being cleared. The outside of the Capitol is definitely not cleared yet. I mean, we can still see a lot of those Trump supporters and those instigators as well still on the grounds. Those are the people who were remaining there after a lot of the protesters we saw had walked away, disappointed, by the way. They didn't really want to leave because they liked, they said, what had happened there today and that they had a perfect right to do that. But this is clearly the hour they're going to start trying to move those who remain. I think one part of the Capitol, and you've talked to Rachel Scott, obviously I haven't even seen her, she's so far away from me, but there's an area over on the other side that's cleared out. This side is definitely not cleared out yet. And I can't imagine they're just going to let these people leave. I mean, there is a curfew in this city. They're supposed to be inside. They're not supposed to be anywhere. So I don't know what they will do with those who remain, but I imagine there'll be numerous arrests here within the hour, George.
Martha Raddatz, thanks very much. I want to go back to Cecilia Vega. Cecilia, the president doubling and tripling down, and now a new tweet just 2 minutes ago where he talks about an election victory unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots.
George, I've covered President Trump for 4 years, and I'm speechless by this. I mean, as we are looking at these images of what Martha just described as an appalling sight unfolding in our nation's capital. You've got the president who is tweeting. He says these are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. He tells them, go home with love and in peace.
Since he has left
and then
office,
he says, remember this day forever.
Rarely, and he speaks when he thinks he is compelled to speak. And so a very important statement here, talking about the mayhem, insurrection, as you say. He doesn't mention President Trump, but there's just no question. Falsehoods, false hopes, and then essentially calling on other Republicans to step up. That's the main point of this statement, calling on the other Republicans who will get back in that Capitol building as soon as the security forces tell them it is secure and it is safe for them to go back in it. The former President George W. Bush hoping, look, the Bush name has become a dirty word in the Trump era of Republican politics, but hoping that people, I'll say, look to their better angels and get it right when they come back into that building.
Yeah, this is a 6-6 situation that has developed here in the nation's capital, and you got to quickly and directly point to the President of the United States for failure to do his job. Presidential historian Doug Brinkley is joining us right now. You know, Doug, give us a little historic perspective on what is unfolding in Washington. I've been a reporter here for a long time. I haven't seen anything like this.
Nothing like this at all, Wolf. I mean, this is the siege of the U.S. Capitol. You know, we usually have had the word siege in a war, like in the Civil War, or, you know, perhaps the Democratic 1968 in Chicago. But here we are watching American citizens, fellow citizens, break in and vandalize our U.S. Capitol, rioting in the streets of Washington, disregarding public and federal property. It's a heinous moment. And usually when we think of being attacked in Washington, you tend to remember, you know, the War of 1812, when the British attacked us, or 9/11 and the scare that the Capitol was going to be a target, and you had an anthrax scare going on now. This group of Trump supporters who refuse to accept the outcome of this election have now terrorizing the entire Washington, D.C. metro area and are ostensibly shutting down other aspects of our government and country. The good news is there are surveillance cameras in the Capitol.
Broken with the president on this as well, saying I spoke with Vice President Pence. He's a genuinely fine and decent man. He exhibited courage today as he did the Capitol on 9/11 as a congressman. I am proud to serve with him. A break of sorts, of course, the Vice President was doing his constitutional duty.
Of the current president
he was
of the
doing
United
his
States
constitutional duty. That's his job. The
all.
president had been pressuring him privately. The president
have been pressuring him publicly. But is it too late? I mean, does Mike Pence, does Robert O'Brien, do they get credit for today saying that they did what the Constitution requires them to do, or that Robert O'Brien supports what the Vice President did because that's what he is supposed to do? This is the oath of office that the Vice President took when he took it 4 years ago. Do they get the credit now for not having spoken up? The President has been spreading these baseless conspiracy theories, these bald-faced lies.
So far, we are just witnessing what's really now seems to be more of the law enforcement presence. Earlier, maybe moments ago, we heard an intercom message, a woman saying and reminding folks who are still out here that the curfew will start at 6 o'clock tonight and will continue until 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. And so far, it seems like people are heeding that warning, at least that curfew. It has quieted down significantly, even from just an hour ago. Again, we are on the west side of things. You can see some of those people in riot gear, tactical gear. They're in their vehicles. They're heading on out. Just to give you guys an update and provide a better understanding, since we're stationary on Connecticut Avenue, I went and walked to the north side of things. That's where it really got heated. Maybe 2 hours ago, that's where we saw the U.S. Capitol Police pushing aside the protesters to get off the property. I just walked over there, and so far the majority of the people I was able to witness
has to insist that the current president is simply unfit to be commander-in-chief, to be president of the United States. Tell us a little bit about that.
Were toppled over, and
Well, that's exactly right, Wolf. And Vice President Pence now, if he chooses to, could start trying to organize that 25th Amendment. Our country is being held hostage right now by Donald Trump. Mitch McConnell and Speaker Pelosi can't even meet on the Capitol today. It was supposed to be the day of our great coronation to celebrate the beginning of a new presidency for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So I think we now have to go into our Constitution kit bag and find what we can do to control Donald Trump. And certainly the 25th Amendment is there. It's an extreme measure. I never thought, Wolf, I'd ever think that could even occur in our lifetime. But we're living in very weird and strange times, as all the images of mayhem going on in Washington, D.C. shows us.
Yeah, and if you want to appreciate how, let's say, unstable the president is right now, with only 14 days to go, look at this tweet that he just posted. And let me get your quick reaction, Doug, before I move on. This is what the president of the United States just said. Hard to believe, but I'll repeat it. These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever. We will remember this day, Doug, forever, but it's not the way the president wants us to remember it, because this is an awful day in American history. This is not a glorious moment.
No, President Trump's right. It is a day that will live in infamy, as Franklin Roosevelt said at the time of Pearl Harbor. But it's going to be about what happens in a democratic society when you have a totalitarian as president. We've at CNN have had pundit and speaker and expert for the last 4 years trying to warn the American people about who this man was. And here today, we've watched his behavior. He incited this rally and riot, and he will pay a very high cost in history and hopefully in the law, law also.
Yeah, and he's praising these rioters. Let's go to Pamela Brown. She's getting more information. Pamela, the curfew went into effect, 22 minutes or so, 12 minutes or so ago. But give us a little bit more information that you're learning.
Well, we've just learned that what we saw today, there has been a death. I just got off the phone with the spokesperson for MPD, who tells me that the adult woman who we reported was in critical condition earlier today, she has now been pronounced dead. She was pronounced dead at the hospital, and now I'm told that D.C. police will take the lead in investigating this. We don't have any information about the circumstances of this or the identification of this woman, but there is video circulating that we are not showing right now, a disturbing video of the woman being treated apparently inside the Capitol building today on the Capitol grounds. She is being treated there. She was transported to the hospital and she has been pronounced dead. Well, there have been multiple injuries amid the mayhem today from not only the rioters, but also police officers there who have been injured. Some have been taken to the hospital. We know of at least one. But this is the first death that we know of from what we have seen unfold there today, Wolf.
So a deadly day in addition to everything else. Alex Marquardt, we see these individuals who are still marching. They're still moving around. There's a curfew supposedly in effect here in the nation's capital. They don't seem to care.
No, they don't, Wolf. We have to say that the number of Trump supporters of rioters has dramatically decreased, but there's still a very strong contingent. They are being pushed back forcefully, aggressively, but not violently by members of the Metropolitan Police Department. As we've been saying, this long line of MPD officers, some in riot gear, some not, have been slowly and methodically pushing them away from the western side of the Capitol, which is where much of this riot started this afternoon. This incursion into the Capitol building started this afternoon. So we have seen over the course of the past hour or so, as we built towards this curfew that, as you mentioned, has now been in effect for about 15 minutes, we have seen them slowly and methodically pushing people away. One interesting thing, Wolf, we just saw about a group of around 24 FBI agents heading towards the Capitol. That is one body, one law enforcement body that we had not seen earlier today. So far, it was mainly limited to different other federal law enforcement agencies as well as local law enforcement agencies. But what you're looking at now, Wolf, are the remnants of these rioters, at least from this side of the Capitol. I don't have visibility on what's happening on other sides of the Capitol. Who continue to chant and shout obscenities at law enforcement. They've been calling them traitors. They've been calling them sellouts, and they've been very, very angry. So there has been a large number of rioters have left, but there is still a strong presence. And I want to say something quickly about the symbolism. Of course, there are a lot of American flags out here, but I would say that those flags are outnumbered by Trump flags, and that really does give you a sense of where I believe the allegiance lies of so many of these rioters. Wolf?
Yeah, it's a really, really dangerous situation that's unfolding, and I suspect in the days to come, 14 days until the inauguration, it's going to become even more tense here in the nation's capital.